It's the time of the moon, it's that Friday that can never come too soon. We hear about science, or maybe some art, or maybe some weird hobby close to somebody's heart. It's Nerd Night.
Get your nerd on.
In Tokyo,
Keep your shirt on.
yours on.
We'll make you think now.
Park Lounge,
Buy a drink now.
we're here, and it's time to begin. Pay your money to Selena and get yourself into a chair. And maybe a sofa. Hey, is Rod lying down again? What a loafer. It's Nerd Night.
Get your nerd on.
In Tokyo,
Keep your shirt on.
yours on.
We'll make you think now.
Park Lounge.
Buy a drink now.
Hey, hey! 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 Who's here? It's Gross. He books all the guests. That's a lot of work, and he's just the best. It's Melvin. He's manning the lenses. He makes sure we can welcome all our online friends. It's Coco, making sure things stay on track when all the shit goes down. She's always got our backs. It's Selena. She takes your hard-earned dust, but she does it with a smile, so no one gives a toss. It's Doria. She's twisting the knobs. If you can hear us, it's because she's done her job. It's great. They're great and they're kind. They rescued our sample when we left it behind.
It's Andrew.
He makes MC look easy, and he also wears a kilt 'cause he likes it breezy. It's Nerd Night
Get your nerd on.
in Tokyo.
Keep your shirt on.
Yours on.
We'll make you think now.
Park Lounge.
Buy a drink now.
It's Nerd Night
Get your nerd on.
in Tokyo.
Keep your shirt on.
Yours on.
We'll make you think now.
Park Lounge.
Buy a drink now.
Here we go.
Okay. All right. So I think I'm going to stop making the trailer because without being able to turn the lights down, no one actually realizes the show has started. It's what happens after we move from a theatrical venue. All right. So welcome to Nerd Night number 68, Social Antisocial. Tonight's music and trailer song by Algorithm, as usual. Nerd Night is the local franchise of a global speaking event. There are Nerd Nights all over the world. There are 4 Nerd Nights in Japan. Every month we host 2 speakers who talk about their field of expertise or something they're interested in. These fields can be science communication talks, science communication talks, also talks about arts, humanities, activism, even weird hobbies. Help us by following us out. No, that's not the right word. Help us by following us on social media, talking about us there, retweeting our posts, tagging us in posts about interesting stuff, etc. So now we get to see whether this is working. The software that's doing the slides is Greg, can you just hit the space bar for me? Don't keep hitting the space bar, then it'll go nuts. Hold on. It's the first time doing it with this little computer. Okay, I guess we just have to click on the next one. That's so annoying. Our next Nerd Night is June 20th. We hope you'll join us. We'll be right here. But tonight is actually May 23rd, and I just want to list a few things that have happened on May 23rd throughout history. In 1430, Joan of Arc was captured at the siege of Compiègne by the Burgundian forces. Okay, not a lot of fans of Joan of Arc here, or the Burgundian forces. In 1829, against everyone's better judgment, the accordion patent was granted to someone named Cyril Demian in Vienna, Austria. In 1911, the New York Public Library was dedicated on this date. The New York Public Library, by the way, loans out books to the public, unlike the Library of Congress. Something you'd expect a president to know. 1945, on this date, Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, committed suicide while in Allied custody. No, Heinrich, no, you have so much to live for. 1995, against everyone's better judgment, the first version of the Java programming language is released. Nerd Night Tokyo is exactly as historically important as all of these events. At least we like to think so. And yeah, we're here in Ryozan Park Lounge in Cozy Sugamo. I forgot to make an age-related joke this time. I forgot to write one, so just think about an age-related joke in your head. I mean, if your brain hasn't completely turned to Swiss cheese like mine has. Oh, by the way, if you want to have your brain turn to Swiss cheese, I mean, if you want to speak at a future event, you can contact, I used to say a team member, but let's face it, it's Bruce, this guy right here in the checks. Yeah, exactly. You ask me, I'm going to say go talk to Bruce. All right. Will it work this time? Nope. And what happened? That's weird. Buy drinks. Because we're at Ryozan Park Lounge and they sell drinks. Please buy them. Yeah. Thanks, Ryozan Park Lounge. And next, might just hit the next one for me since yeah, not sure why this is being, I guess running this on a tiny little MacBook was not the best idea. I'm going to have to steal my son's computer again next time. I was hoping, I did this, it was his birthday recently and I wanted to make him happy, and so I decided not to steal the computer he uses. It's my computer, technically. Yeah, call for volunteers. We need people to do all these things. If you're specifically interested in any of these things, particularly making these, like putting these slide things together so I don't have to do it. Yeah, social media stuff, because Bruce and I suck at that. I mean, Bruce is, no, I'm not, sorry, I'm not starting to slag you off, but like, we're not motivated. Neither of us are social media people. We're not social. What's that? No, neither of us are Instagram influencers. I mean, we're not including Bruce's like bikini account. That's a whole separate thing he does for attention. Yeah, okay, next slide. So if you, there we go. Yeah, join the mailing list. So join the mailing list. This is where I used to make a joke that we only send you tasteful dick pics. And then, but I was told not to do that anymore. And then a photo of somebody named Dick would pop up, right? And that was hilarious. But I was told I shouldn't do that anymore because it was getting, dull. And it was juvenile and immature, which, fair enough. But last time I did this, a blue-footed booby showed up and then... Any ideas? What's going on? It's another. Okay, I'm getting. Oh, it's a sea of goats. Waiting for the penny to drop. A sea of goats. It's a raunchy goatsy. Last time, the blue-footed booby came up, and before I could even say it, someone in the audience shouted, "Blue-footed booby!" I thought, like, for sure, after this one. Anyway, all right. So let's move on. Tonight on the agenda, we once again bring you, maybe just everyone's too young to remember Goatsy. Maybe that's what it is. You're all too young. We're going to bring you two interesting people, and here they are. First, psychology researcher Robin. No, it's a TH, a sound or a D sound? D. So, Orthey? Robin Orthey will discuss his research on detecting fabricated cognitive deficits and concealed knowledge related to criminal activity. So try not to look shifty. Our second speaker tonight is Edmund Edgar, who will take us on a nerdy tour of AtProto, the open protocol behind the social network Bluesky. I don't have a joke there. After each talk, there's going to be a short... I've got a joke later. After each talk, there's going to be a Q&A. Please wait for the mic to ask your questions so the people on the live stream can hear you. And yeah, let's go to the next slide so I can introduce our first speaker. Let me put this in my pocket since it's not working anyway. Robin, remind me to pass this off to you, okay? Because I will forget. Okay. Dr. Robin Orthey holds a PhD in legal psychology from Maastricht University. I probably pronounced that wrong. In the Netherlands, I think I pronounced that right, and the University of Portsmouth, United Kingdom. I think I pronounced that right. He arrived in Japan in 2019, good timing, and served as a postdoctoral research fellow at Kwansei Gakuen University and Aoyama Gakuen University. Since 2024, he's been a member of the Converging Technology Research Laboratory at Fujitsu, which sounds like it might result in a lot of crossed eyes as technology converges. What? Right. That was pretty bad. His research is centered on the assessment and development of psychological tests designed to detect malingered cognitive deficits, which he will explain the meaning of that, or concealed knowledge related to criminal activity. So he's a narc, be careful. Robin, put your hands together for Robin. It's still on 3. He's still on 3.
The clicker, please.
Yes. There you go. And let me flip over to your slides. These yours? Yeah. Is the clicker? Oh, good, it's working. Wonderful. Something's going right for me tonight. Ugh.
Okay, can everyone hear me and see the presentation? Yes? Thank you very much for the great introduction. Yeah, I'm Robin. Now I work at Fujitsu Converging Technology. Basically what we do is we combine many disciplines with technology. My background actually is psychology. So today I will talk a bit about concealed crime knowledge detection, but first I want to show you a bit the kind of problem I'm interested in. So if we take a look at this person is infamous as, infamously known as Action Mark. He was a soldier in the UK, and after he retired, he claimed disability benefits because he was in pain. Well, interestingly enough, he also climbed Mount Kilimanjaro for a charity. So when the disability office, do we have a?
Just keep going.
Yeah. So the disability office was wondering how somebody who receives benefits for being in pain can also climb Mount Kilimanjaro. He was found guilty of disability fraud in this case. So here we look at financial compensation. Another more tragic case, it was from Japan. Here a person was accused of murdering his family, but during the defense, essentially the person claimed that a medical condition caused memory loss, so he can't remember anything about the event. Now, in this case, the purpose was to use this problem as a legal defense. Now, the court didn't believe them, but I'm interested in this phenomenon, which we call malingering. Essentially, this is when people simulate psychological or cognitive problems, for example, pain, memory loss, hearing loss, in order to gain something. Like the first case, some money, or in the second case, as a legal defense strategy. And when you have to assess somebody's symptoms, when they care more about compensation than actually being cured of the problem they have, then the suspicion is very high of malingering. So I want to start with a very simple test that we can use to check the validity of these symptoms, because maybe you know, or of course you know, Japan is an aging society, so we have a lot of old people. But maybe what people do not know right now is that amongst the age groups, the one with the highest increase in crime rates is in the elderly. So it's not unreasonable that an old person actually suffers from some memory problems or not. So how can we tell if these symptoms are genuine or not? And here we have a case. Basically someone said, yeah, I have left-sided weakness, so they can't move their body, and they're deaf. And they just asked for money. They didn't really care about being cured. So the doctors observed them, the weakness went away, but they still said they can't hear anything. So they conducted a forced choice test to see if the person is really deaf. And the way that tests, and here's the way the test works. So for example, the person has headphones on and is put in front of a lamp. The lamp lights up red for 2 seconds. Then it lights up blue for 2 seconds, and determined randomly, we play a sound. So in this case, a sound is played during the blue interval. Afterwards, we just ask the person during the red or blue interval, when did you hear the sound? The person must reply. This is the forced part of this test. For example, he says red. Now we repeat this 100 times. The logic behind this test is very simple, actually. If you are really deaf, you can't hear the sound, you have a probability of 50% to guess correctly during which of the 2 intervals the sound was played, which means over a large number of trials, we expect your total score to fall within chance performance. However, if you can hear the sound and you want to create the image that you are deaf, some people, they select incorrect answers on purpose. And they do so more frequently than we would expect by chance. So in this case, it was 36 out of 100 trials. That doesn't look so far away from 50, but if you calculate the probability, this is extremely unlikely. So the chance that this outcome happens by true guessing is under 1%. So the clinicians here concluded this must be on purpose. Now, maybe the more interesting part, this first example was a clinical example, is how we use this for crime memory. So this is when somebody says, I have memory loss, maybe due to dementia or something else about the crime. So Danny, here a clinician, also has several cases about specific crimes. Now, the principle is still the same. You get a question, 2 answers, but we cannot have a simple performance test for the light. So in this case, we ask about specific facts of the crime. So the clinician has to study the facts available to the police and then make binary choice questions. So here the suspect was accused of robbing a bank while dressed as a female. So they had some evidence and they asked, and they made these questions. The star means this was the correct answer. And again, the person gets the question, has to choose one of the 2, but the principle is the same. If too few answers are correct, we would conclude that the memory loss actually is faked. Now, what is the forced choice test in summary? Basically, when we look at malingering, we care about fabrication of cognitive symptoms or memory problems for financial gain or as a legal defense strategy. The FCT is very simple to detect this kind of underperformance. This is what we call when people make mistakes on purpose. And we can use it for cognitive complaints and crime amnesia. Okay, so this was a very brief introduction of malingering and a very simple test what we do, but now let's move on to the main test I want to talk about today. And I've written a paper with some of my colleagues about some of the unique aspects of the Japanese legal system, and specifically here the methods police uses. So there's a part about interviewing, a part about concealed crime knowledge detection, and a part about lineups. So I will talk today about the second part. This is an open access paper. You can just download it for free, but don't feel obliged to do so. So unfortunately now I have to talk about something else first. So in Japan you will hear the word polygraph, and I suspect that all of you have heard this before. Now the issue is that when we hear this word, depending on the country, it actually refers to a different test. So most of you are familiar with a test in the literature called control question test. So that's the one on the left. This is basically the polygraph you see on television, commonly used in the US and unfortunately some European countries. And on the right we have the concealed information test. This is the test only used in Japan, but unfortunately both use the same word, polygraph. Now, to understand what the concealed information test is, first let me explain what the polygraph used in the US is. And I want to preface, the scientific community is quite clear here that this is not a good test, but I just wanted to understand how proponents of this test say this works, and then later we look at another test, okay? So essentially the way this test starts is you have an examiner and they make you believe that this test is perfect, that it can detect lies, and if you lie, you fail. They spend 30 minutes or more to make you believe this. This is of course a lie, but this is the start. And then they ask you 2 types of questions. One is the so-called relevant question, and this is about the crime. Did you steal the wallet? Yes or no? Did you break into the house? Yes or no? Something like that. And then they give you a so-called control question. So here the question is designed to make you lie. During the pre-interview, they also tell you you basically can't say yes to any of the questions. It also means you fail and there will be bad consequences. So when you get a control question, they ask you something like, have you ever lied to a person of authority? Yeah, of course, everyone has. So these questions are designed to make you lie when you say no. So according to them, the logic is, if you're innocent of the crime, you are more afraid of lying in the control question than in the relevant question. If you committed the crime, you care more about the relevant question. So is the logic. There's extensive scientific evidence to check the validity of this, and basically there's not so much. I want to refer you to the National Research Council. That's basically a panel of independent scientists constructed a 83-page report to check all the available evidence, and they come to the conclusion that basically that the control question test is not valid at all. So in a nutshell, there's no theoretical basis, like there's no reason why we would believe that this comparison works. The available evidence is very poor. Often the ground truth is not established. So usually this test is used when there's no evidence because they don't know what else to do. So of course you don't know if somebody is considered a liar, if it's actually true or not. And the detection accuracy is vastly overestimated. So when you check their websites or talk to people from this sphere, they will tell you things like it has a 99 or 100% accuracy rate. In scientific research, this has not been found. At best, it's somewhere around 60%, but there are limitations to that as well. This is a hot button issue in some places, but I don't want to spend too much time on this, so I'll refer you to this paper or ask me questions later. What I do want to talk about is the concealed information test. And the funny story here is that it was kind of developed by accident when a psychologist wanted to find out how good the other test actually works. Now, at the time, the story goes, they didn't know how the control question test was performed. So they had to come up with an own experiment to see if physiological responses can be used in a meaningful way for the criminal investigation. Now, a quick background. So in Japan, actually, we used both CQT and CIT in the beginning, but over 20 years ago, someone here decided that only the CIT is used. That's the test with scientific backing. But the other test was used in the beginning as well. Now, another thing, both tests can easily be confused. First of all, the machine is always the same. We just measure sweat, heart rate, respiration. Those are just body responses that correlate with many psychological concepts. So it's not unique to lie detection or memory detection. But so while the setup is the same, the CIT differs in every other aspect, in how it is done, what the goal of the test is, and the theoretical and scientific support in general. Now, before we go to the key point of how it works, I want to talk to you about a fundamental research paradigm. If you study psychology, we have three big fields: clinical, social psychology, and neuroscience or psychophysiology. You learn in psychophysiology, you learn this paradigm, the so-called oddball paradigm, which is one of the most basic but fundamental research designs that you can do. And it's really, really simple. Basically, we have a sequence of stimuli. Some, they're called standards, they're always the same and frequent. And occasionally, the target, it's a rare and slightly different stimulus. That's all we do. You sit in front of a computer, usually, and you hear some sounds or some pictures, just one after another, while we measure some body function. So here I put the P300 brainwave. That's an event-related potential. Essentially, what we see in the oddball paradigm is the target elicits a larger response than the filler. That's all to it. Now, how can we make use of this really fundamental principle for in a criminal investigation? When the CIT is conducted, you receive also a question. For example, what was the murder weapon? And then, one after another, you get different answers. Was it a baseball bat? Was it a gun? Was it a crossbow, a rope, a hammer, a knife? And you always say no. Now, what happens if you don't know anything about the crime? well, it could be any of these answers, so we expect none of them stand out and all of them produce a similar response. Now, if you do know the correct answer, for example, you used a hammer, then suddenly the hammer becomes different from the rest. Now we have a functioning oddball paradigm. And the beauty of this design is that everyone receives the same procedure, but the response differs basically on if you know the correct answer or not. Also, to be clear, knowing the correct answer doesn't mean you committed the crime. The test can't check that. The test only checks or confirms the presence of memory. Now, here I have a brief overview of what this actually looks like. So at the very left here, skin conductance response, basically that's sweat. When we present you with the correct answer, we see a larger response. For the incorrect ones, it will be smaller. Here we have the P300. So this is actually not used in practice because it's too a bit expensive and too cumbersome to set up, but we have the same principle. Correct answer elicits larger response than incorrect answers. Here we have heart rate. The figure here plots change in heart rate, but basically when the correct answer is presented, your heart rate decreases. And then lastly, for respiration, the correct answer, we see a shortening of breath. Okay, so this is what the physiological responses look like, but at the beginning of each test, we do something which is just called the card test, and it has several purposes. First of all, we teach the suspect how the test works, but also we check that the equipment works and how the person responds. So skin conductance response, this one, the very left one, is the strongest response, but around 20% of the human population doesn't have a measurable skin conductance response. It's just not there. It doesn't mean anything, but it just means in some cases the best indicator is not available to us. So we do this procedure to check this. What you do basically is we have 5 cards, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I ask you to draw one, memorize the number, and then we just do the test. I basically ask you, was your card 3? Was your card 4? And you always say no. Here I have a recording where I went to a police station with some of my students and I made them do the test. Here these two are skin conductance. So the second one is the one we actually use, the response. The top one is skin conductance level. That's like your general sweat level. This can be used to indicate mood. We have heart rate here and respiration is down here. We see every time the examiner poses the question, that's the first click, and the second click is when the examinee says no. If we have time, we can talk later more about this. Now, I've talked a lot about this test, but does it really work? So here I want to present a study conducted from Zaitsu. He was a Japanese police polygrapher or forensic examiner, but also conducts research. And this is something also I want to highlight, what I think is very strong about Japan, because the practitioners here not only use the test, but they also, first of all, have the background of a scientist in psychophysiology, but also they actively develop the test. So what happens often is that Japanese forensic scientists, they acquire a PhD while on the job. They try to improve and develop the method. And essentially here, so you don't have to worry about why some of these graphs are negative, because those are relative scores, but he compares the experimental setting with the field setting. Because you might say, well, it's nice, I conducted tests in my laboratory, but the student is not afraid, or they might not show the same responses. So how can you trust any evidence that is produced at a university? In real life, it should be very different. Well, he compared the card test with real suspects in a real Japanese investigation and a card test conducted in the laboratory. And essentially we see that for both critical and unbiased, that's the same as target and standard, basically between experiment and field, we see similar responses for all 3 indices. Essentially, it's nice evidence that we can trust we have a problem? Sorry. That we can reasonably trust the literature, the evidence. Now, so how is it actually used in Japan? First of all, we have an investigator. They have to solve a crime, and they collect evidence. And then, if they feel the time is right, they request a CIT examination. In some cases, not always, the CIT examiner has to visit the scene of the crime to, not collect more evidence, but think about what somebody would know if they were somehow involved in this crime, because it's a bit different kind of information than what maybe is typically used as evidence. But then the investigator and examiner, they discuss what they want to confirm. So I gave you the question, what was the murder weapon? That's the big important question, but actually you would never get the really important question during this examination. Instead, for example, they want to confirm knowledge that places you maybe at the scene of the crime. They don't want to reveal the big things later. Because the purpose of this test, it's not to reach a conclusion, yes or no, it was you, but to produce evidence that the investigator uses in the interview later. So it's a preparation, really, or a support for the actual interview. And also, this is why the test is conducted in advance. Also, if you interview people first, they might be confronted with the facts. Suddenly, they have this knowledge. The moment you have this knowledge, you basically fail this test. So if you contaminate your suspect with the knowledge through the interview, you can't do this test anymore. This is essentially how it is done today. Now, there is an alternative application, and this is called the searching CIT. The principle is very simple. If you recognize the correct one, it sticks out. But it assumes, or the purpose here is, we have a suspect, we don't know if this person has the knowledge or not. But what if we turn the tables? For example, we are very certain this person is the perpetrator, but maybe we don't know something about the crime. So if I do want to know something about it, well, I don't know what the correct answer is, but I can make reasonable guesses. And if the correct answer is among the reasonable guesses, then the same principle should hold true. The suspect doesn't know that I maybe don't know this. Here we see a study essentially from some of my colleagues in the Netherlands. They asked people the date of an attack. So the students have to plan a terror attack basically. And then they ask you, when are you going to do it? And the same principle again holds true. The correct answer elicits a differential response. It's just the same principle, just used in the opposite direction. So everything I've told to you about the polygraph, well, first of all, there's two polygraphs. There's the CQT that you know from the US. In my and maybe the vast majority of the scientific community, this is not a valid test and frankly should be avoided at all cost. In contrast, there's the CIT. It's a quite supported, well-founded test. It's a memory detection test. It's not a lie detection test. That's also very important. It is used as support, and it's based on really a fundamental research design, the oddball paradigm, which itself also has received very strong support. Now, everything I have said can be checked, and I highly encourage you to do so. And I think that's it. Please, let's have some questions.
Yay, yay, yay. Trying to find the pitch. Yay, thank you, Robin. So, have we got any questions? And can I have other Nerd Night volunteers pass the mics around because I'm tethered to a camera. So, yay. So we got one right behind me. I'm just going to pass this one right back, and then you can take that one.
How might one purposely invalidate a CIT test?
I can tell you that, but I don't know if I should. First of all, in Japan, the CIT is voluntary. You can refuse it. Most people don't, but you can. I can't speak to other. Let's just say you can refuse the test. That's the easiest way. you can defeat it. The first thing is you need to know how it works, which means that one answer is different and they expect a differential response to the correct answer relative to the others. The other is you need to produce physiological responses, increased sweat, heart rate, respiration. There are many ways to do it. The tricky part is to do it consistently and convincingly. So I have met a forensic examiner and they showed me a case where the person amplified their response to every response except the correct one. It was very obvious, which, by the way, is same principle as forced choice test. Yeah, so it's possible. Every test can be beaten. This is kind of also where my research, what my research is about, how to improve these tests. Essentially, yeah, it comes down to the knowledge and skill. Like this, none of this information is secret. You could buy a book that would tell you all of this. You can read my paper, which will basically give you this information as well. It's open access. The same method can also be used to beat the control question test, right? Like you know how it works, so you would just amplify your response to the control questions, and that's just it. There are some ways to measure the easy ways to amplify your responses, but also there are some that are almost impossible to measure, or there are so many ways like you can't measure everything.
When I did a full scope polygraph for some employment that I had in the past, I had researched the polygraph before, and one of the things that I was told is that having knowledge of how the polygraph worked in the first place was kind of a damning thing. Is it the same thing with the CIT? Do they actually ask you, are you familiar with the CIT process, etc.?
Okay, well, the CIT is the complete opposite. The CQT, they're quite deceptive to you. They make you believe it works. They basically make you lie. The CIT is fully transparent. As I said, first of all, it's voluntary. Second of all, we do the card test. You have a training. They explain to you everything beforehand. They tell you what's going to happen, what they show you. Something I didn't mention, so they will show you the questions first. So they might ask you, okay, I want to ask you what was the murder weapon, and I have these 6 answers. And then you have an opportunity to already say, do you already know the answer? And you might say, oh yeah, maybe it was a gun because I noticed our gun was missing or something like that. And then they have to decide, okay, is this a good reason enough? The question would be eliminated anyway. But essentially, the consequence of the CIT is you have to explain why you know things to the investigator later, at best. Or the investigator will decide to pursue the interview or not, and things like that. With the CQT, they say you are lying, yes or no. The CQT, by the way, is also not accepted as a legal thing in the US, to my knowledge. The CIT is also not accepted in Japan, although in many ways it meets the required standards, but there's no desire to use it in that way. So about the knowledge, well, I think both tests can be defeated with the knowledge, so I understand why proponents of the CQT would spread the idea that if you know how the test works, it will be damning, if that's what you mean.
Sorry, one more question before I pass this off. All right. How much is refusing the test actually weighed in Japanese legal processes?
Well, not at all.
So it might, in law, be not weighed at all, but in real life.
Yeah, so not at all, because it doesn't have any, it's not evidence, it's a guidance tool for the investigator. basically nobody refuses in Japan. So I can't speak to what happens when you do. Maybe some people will focus more on you, maybe some people will focus less on you. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm probably going to ask a question that you always hear, but how does psychopathy work? Because if someone's a psychopath, for example, not that I have not that much knowledge on psychopaths, by the way, I hope, but just had to clarify. But for example, if you said to me, did you break that glass? My heart would be, I would feel very nervous, but I assume a psychopath would be like, no, continue. You know, they wouldn't feel, you know, that heart increase and so on and so forth.
Yeah, okay, so a couple of things. First of all, I'm not an expert in psychopathy. I know a little bit about it, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. For the CIT, it doesn't matter, because it checks memory. It doesn't check if you're nervous or not. It is pure memory recognition. So for that, it doesn't matter. For the CQT, to my somewhat limited knowledge, psychopaths, they just lie all the time. So I think they don't care. But I don't think the CQT is a valid test in the first place. So
I just quickly wanted to ask, why do Japanese not refuse the test? Because I would have assumed they would have been like, no, 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 it's too troublesome. Sorry.
I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to ask, so you mentioned that this test is primarily used in Japan. I wanted to know why it's not been popularized in other parts of the world.
Yeah, thank you very much. Excellent question. So I mentioned the big report before that basically shows that the CQT doesn't work. It also mentions the limitations of this test. So first of all, for the CIT, you need evidence. If you don't have any facts, anything you can ask, then, well, you can't conduct the test. And that's also why the CQT is so popular, because you just ask someone, did you do it? But then, furthermore, memory is a tricky thing. So we ask about memory detail, but I don't know, what are we looking at? If we look at maybe a burglary and there was a series, so I ask you one question, but can you remember if one fact was from one burglary or another, or your memory mixes? Also with time, you just forget things. So when we look at detection accuracy, the CIT is very good for innocent people, because essentially you would have to, by chance, significantly show significantly stronger responses to the correct item consistently. So usually you have 5 questions, 5 answer alternatives, of which one is correct. So it's quite unlikely that this happens consistently. The drawback is, so it's quite safe for false positives, meaning an innocent person falsely being accused. On the other hand, there are many factors that can reduce memory, or you can beat the test. So the accuracy of detecting someone who has knowledge is not that high. But you have to take both together. There's always sensitivity, the likelihood of detecting somebody who has the knowledge, and specificity, the likelihood of correctly rejecting someone who doesn't have it. And this test clearly favors the safer side. And also, this is my huge problem with the control question test, because I think it's very unsafe for innocent people. Now, the idea is that they should not be afraid of the real questions, but you know, if the police doesn't believe you and ask you to take a polygraph test, then you might be nervous as well when they ask you, did you murder your wife or husband? So, yeah. So the scientific evidence on the laboratory evidence on the CQT has some limitations, because we can't recreate a similar situation. It is never as high stakes as the real life. So the proponents of this test will say, yeah, well, all the tests you do in the lab, they're not valid. They don't really show what we measure. Okay, fair enough. But then the accuracy evaluations the CQT people do. First of all, they validate everything with confessions. So somebody who evades the test will not tell you, haha, I beat the test, actually it was me. So you don't know these people. And then I think we know, especially from the US, that false confessions are a thing, especially under certain circumstances, or if they tell you, you know, you can confess now and then you just go to prison and we don't kill you. So there are reasons, I think there are strong reasons to question the reported detection accuracy for the CQT, and the CIT has the opposite problem, I think. I'm sorry I rambled a bit. Did that answer your question?
Something that, in my experience, we've talked a lot about in entry-level legal courses is the defense of automania, when the person claims to be unaware of their actions, or unaware of the Nite in question, which you had touched on earlier. Can you speak on how the CIT test would be able to possibly validate or invalidate someone's claim of, for example, being blackout drunk at the night of an event, or whether there is any sort of detection of subconscious memory within the person who may actually have not be able to consciously recall events in the night, but have certain aspects of collected evidence trigger certain reactions within themselves subconsciously?
Okay, that's a lot of things. So first of all, just to be clear, the CIT, it just checks at the point of testing, do you have this knowledge, yes or no? That's essentially what it does. So I presented a case where somebody said basically something like, I have early onset dementia, I can't remember anything. I have memory loss for this event. It doesn't say anything about how this memory loss occurred, so if it was alcohol-induced or something. So the conscious-subconscious thing is a debate in psychology. I sit on the side where I don't believe there's such a thing as unconsciousness. Like, you have the memory or not. Yeah. So, and the first thing you mentioned, if somebody does something involuntarily, again, the test doesn't check this. It checks if you have the knowledge. So if you do, suppose you did something involuntarily and you still remember it, then the test would show the knowledge that you know it. But again, maybe the most important thing of what I said today, just knowing or having the knowledge doesn't mean you did it. There can be many reasons why you have this knowledge. One reason can be this information was published in the newspaper. Well, then the examiners are professionals, right? They don't make these kind of mistakes. But in theory, you could, through some source or whatever, know the truth. So it doesn't mean that you did it.
Okay, thank you.
We got time for one more. How about right there?
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was really enjoyable. And I have one question. How do you differentiate that cognition, the knowledge, versus just the general reaction? Like, for example, like you show your body reacts to a weapon gun, for example, and your body may react that way because you know that was a weapon, or it could be just a general reaction because you're feared over it, or maybe like your parents was shot by the gun and you react to it. How do you differentiate that?
Yeah. So firstly, in a way, you don't differentiate it. So I want to show two things. So this was a real recording, and we notice a break here. So basically, my student did something they were not supposed to do, so they took a break. Because moving or doing something, it will be visible in the chart. So there are so many ways you can create and affect your responses. So when the examiner notices that something is off, then they would stop and mark this, for example. But then secondly, so you're absolutely correct. It's the test expects you to react to every answer, but to react the strongest to the correct answer. So because it's cooler, I've only showed cases where it works, But if you don't know the truth, basically I would expect a similar response here everywhere, right? So in this case, the correct one is here, skin conductance response. The strongest is also the only one you can really see live in the data. This is the raw data or the recorded data. For the rest, we have to make transformations. But essentially, we would expect every answer or every stimulus to evoke a response. But over all responses, we would expect to see a pattern for the correct one or see no pattern if
The general body reaction, is there any differences between that cognition versus like for fear or pressure, or is there any difference?
So cognition, or here memory recognition and fear, both. So, okay. I think this is also one of the key differences between both tests I have introduced. We use the same machine, but we test different psychological concepts. So in my opinion, the test in the USA, the control question test, is based on fear. You are afraid that you are caught lying. That's the logic they promote. But they also measure sweat, heart rate, respiration. In my case, memory recognition is a different psychological concept measured by the same things. So the difference here is the procedure, what kind of questions you ask, what kind of test situation you create.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's what we have time for, but Robin's not disappearing to my knowledge, so you can still talk to him on the break. We're going to take a 20-minute break now, so go get drinks, make our landlords happy. And by landlords, I mean like landlords, people operating the bar, right? In the sort of English sense of landlord. Yeah. Got to get a big hand for Robin. Yay! That's
Oh, little boy, little girl, little person, little jumpsuit wearing sequins. Well, it's time to stop your midnight driving and put your dancing shoes away. A little woman, little man, little grown up, little platform wearing disco fan. It's time to stop your late night shaking. It's the end of a long dancing day. This is a disco. This is a disco lullaby. Lay down your funky head. It's time to go to sleep now. Go get tucked into bed. Your daddy and your mommy will boogie shake their bunnies at the disco scene. But first they'll tuck you into bed and you'll disco in your dreams. Disco dreams. Oh, little boy, little girl, little person, little jumpsuit wearing sequins. Well, it's time to stop your midnight jiving and put your dancing shoes away. A little woman, little man, little grown up, little platform wearing disco fan. It's time to stop your late night shaking. It's the end of a long dancing day. This is a disco. This is a disco lullaby. Lay down your funky head. It's time to go to sleep now. Go get tucked into bed. Your daddy and your mommy will boogie shake their bunnies at the disco scene. But first they'll tuck you into bed and you'll disco in your dreams.
Unmute. Whoa, okay. Just heads up, everybody. We're coming back in about 2 minutes, okay? This is your 2-minute call. We're back in 2 minutes. Don't mute me while I'm in the middle of talking. Oh, okay, you didn't? Okay, great. Sorry for the people right by the speakers. I need to make sure the people on the other side of the room hear me. We're back in 2 minutes. All right, here we go. You want to hit the next slide for me? Next one. We don't have any beakers tonight. All right, welcome back. I want to tell you about our friends at Tokyo Humanities Cafe. They call it a cafe, right? I don't know why they call it. Maybe we should call ourselves Nerd Night Cafe or so. Everyone else is cafe something. I don't know. Is it a French thing, Lucille, just to call everything cafe? There's a microphone cafe. There's a carpet cafe. A salon. Yeah, they're our friends. They also do events here. Don't know when the next one is. You can look them up on Facebook. That QR code will take you there. I'm not going to leave that on screen for very long, though. So you can just look up Tokyo Humanities. It'll probably come up if you put in quotation marks in a search engine that isn't evil. All right, let's go to the next slide. And I just have to tell you about our friend Space Cafe. I don't know when their next event is either. Either they usually send me something, but they haven't sent me anything this month. So, we jumped ahead. That's okay. Space Cafe, usually Good Heavens in Shimokitazawa. Again, you can find them on Facebook and stuff. And now I got to talk about this. Nerd Night Tokyo is produced by, not only our lovely volunteers and team, but by YTG. YTG is a registered nonprofit. We are a theater company, and any net income that we manage to produce through this goes to Yokohama Theater Group to produce projects. Currently working on an audio project set during the Beatles tour to Tokyo in 1966, I think it was. That's going to be released free as a podcast. And from Monday, we start work on our new show called Anxiety by Davian T. Brown. He's a playwright based in the U.S., originally from Australia. Apparently, he lived here for like a month when he was 10. But not here either. It was Osaka. But anyway, he's coming, and we're making a show with him, and that will be. I'll announce the actual details next time. But let's hit the next slide. We're a nonprofit, so we choose our shows primarily based on artistic merit and process. Can we have an interesting process? So really, what I like to call high risk, low reward productions. These shows don't get made if we don't make them. And sometimes, like the creators we work with would just not be able to produce a show in any other way. That's sort of what we do. Being here tonight is essentially a donation to YTG. But if you want to be generous and help us out by making more donations, that will support YTG and in making those projects I already described to you and many others into the future, I hope. Okay. I think that's all the housekeeping. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, okay, good. That's right. Okay. I had a minute where that's not right though. That's not right. That is, why don't I have I'm having so many trouble. Like, I downloaded this slide like 3 times and it's different. It was different. Like this said Chrisman when I looked at it this afternoon. Like the speaker from December. Okay, ignore this. Let's go flip over to the presentation, actually. That'll be easier. So, I'm sorry about that. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to give you the... Is this it? And yeah, I think as soon as I take the mouse off it or put the mouse on it, there we go. And then we should just make sure... There's your clicker. You'll need that. So, just Snafu City tonight. This is why I need help making these slides, because stuff like this happens when I'm in charge. Right. Would it be better if the systems we use to talk to each other weren't owned by some company that will obviously screw us over sooner or later? This is you wrote this, right? I don't want to take credit for this part. This talk will be about the attempts to build systems like that, focusing mainly on AtProto, the protocol behind Bluesky. Now, despite sounding like an Anglo-Saxon king cosplayer, Edmund Edgar, let's call him Double Eddie, is a free software developer based in Mashiko in Tochigi-ken. I'm sure he brought enough strawberries for everybody. Deep cut, Japanese deep cut. Or the bones of the first Tokugawa shogun. He's been there's the place where he's, yeah, okay, we know that. All right, just no reaction. All right, he's been working, tough crowd tonight. He's been working on decentralized tech since around 2013. He maintains reality.eth, a crowdsourced fact-checking service. And unless there's anything else you want me to add, I think that's good. I think we can put our hands together for Edmund Edgar. That one's on. Okay, he's on 3.
Okay, here we go.
Just make sure it works. Yeah.
Long, long ago, the internet used to look like this. Actually, this is my website. My website still looks like this. But on a technical level, it looked kind of like this. By the way, I hope you appreciate my slides here. I tried to get AI to clean them up, and it couldn't read my writing either. So it's going to be like this. So what we've got is I would make my post in HTML. I would upload it to my web server, and then people would read it from the web server, and then you would do the same maybe with your web server. There's a lot to recommend itself about this arrangement, right? So anybody can publish whatever they like. Nobody can stop you publishing. I can host it off my own computer if I want to, connect to the internet, or I can use some shared hosting somewhere. If I'm using shared hosting somewhere and I don't like the job that the host is doing, I can just move it, right? I've got my DNS name pointing at my domain. I can just flip it over to some other service, and you won't really notice the difference. So we have shared hosting, but it's not opinionated, right? It doesn't have like editorial control. So that's what the web kind of used to look like. And then we got to Web 2.0, and it started to look more like this. And it was pretty great. So I was an early Twitter user, absolutely loved Twitter, made loads of friends on Twitter. My career was kind of basically off Twitter. And Twitter was really fun. But we had then a slightly different technical arrangement, which looks a little bit more like this. So instead of having a bunch of different web servers where everybody uploads their content to their own web server, we've got some guy's web server with one database holding everybody's content. So that some guy would be like Zuckerberg running Facebook, or as it was in the day, Jack Dorsey running Twitter. And all our content ends up on their server. So there were some reasons why the web went that way, right? So we started off with Web 1, and it just didn't have some stuff that Web 2 ended up needing. So we didn't have identity built into Web 1, really, right? I had stuff on my website, but you couldn't really see who I was. Whereas this, this Jerry Adams conversation is only funny because we know that we're talking to an IRA terrorist. We didn't have really social connections. So if I'm on Twitter, I'm getting content that is shared by my friends and people I want to follow. So we have that whole social graph. That's really important, it turns out. We didn't have structured data. This is a more technical thing, but when I was uploading like HTML pages to my website, they were basically just sort of documents, right? They had like paragraphs and tables, but they weren't structured as posts and replies and likes and retweets, right? There was no kind of meaning in that data. And it turns out that if you can track kind of the meaning, the semantics of some data, then you can show it in different ways in different applications and do really useful things with it. So we wanted data structure. And finally, we didn't really have resilience. So back in the day, we had this term slashdotting, where there was a website called Slashdot that hosted that showed you a lot of links of interesting content. And once you got to Slashdot, often you would find about half the links would be broken because all of the other Slashdot users clicking on this link would cause the web server to fall over and you wouldn't be able to see it anymore. So Web 2.0 solved this problem by just having like 3 web servers in the world, well, we're 3 sites in the world run by a few different people that expected to be hosting loads and loads of content. So anyway, so that's where we went. And at first it was kind of great. Like we had some really great Twitter conversations. Twitter was really cool. Some people like Facebook. Somebody likes LinkedIn, I don't know. But there are some real problems with it. So if a billionaire buys the thing, they end up having editorial control over your entire life, right? Over your entire social, like all your communications. Obviously that's really bad, and that kind of happened with Twitter. If you live somewhere with a bad government, then potentially that government will coerce the people hosting the Web 2.0 site to remove your content or to edit your content. And then the business models of Web 2.0 sites were just not really conducive to having a good experience. So on Twitter and Facebook and all of those sites right now, they really want to maximize engagement, right? They want to get you emotionally involved to make you click and stay on that website. So they would rather make you angry than make you bored. And they would rather make you dumb than make you bored. And and there's a problem that people who are trying to share links have now found that anything with a link on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, anywhere, gets kind of suppressed by the algorithms that are maintaining the content, because those sites don't want you to leave their site. Even though like the whole point of the internet was to have links, but they're just trying really hard to squish them. So we have all these problems. Once you get a successful Web 2.0 site and people are enjoying it, it tends to go bad. But once it goes bad, you can't escape because there's this network effect. So all your friends are on this same website. If we could all coordinate to go somewhere else at the same time, we could maybe say, okay, Twitter's gone to shit. Twitter isn't doing a good job of maintaining our social connections and showing us what our friends are saying. We're all going somewhere else. But that needs coordination. Everybody has to agree at the same time to all move. And that actually hardly ever happens. Arguably, it kind of happened in the move from Dig to Reddit, just sort of once in the history of the internet. But nearly always what happens is that a site will just kind of slowly crumble, and that some people will move off, some people will go here, some people will go there, but you never manage to preserve the network effect when you leave a Web 2.0 site. And that's meant that these Web 2.0 sites just have a lot of power over you. They can really screw up your experience, and you don't have a choice except to leave your whole community behind. Okay, so that's the problem that we wanted to solve, and one of the people who wanted to solve this problem was Jack Dorsey, who at the time was running Twitter. And Jack Dorsey is a big kind of decentralization nut. And so he made this project inside Twitter to make a way to make Twitter decentralized so that he wouldn't be in control of it. And if he then gave up the website to somebody else, they wouldn't be in control of it. Which, whatever we think about Jack Dorsey, turned out to be kind of prescient. So he got together a bunch of people from the P2P world, from projects like IPFS, which is a file sharing service, Secure Scuttlebutt, which is an earlier attempt at decentralized social networking, and then also people from like blockchain places like Jay Graber came from Zcash, which is a privacy-focused cryptocurrency project. And he got them together and said, can you design me a protocol for running Twitter? Now, Jay Graber, who ended up the CEO of this thing, who was from Zcash, she insisted that she wasn't going to be a project group inside Twitter. She wanted her own organization that would be independent of Twitter, which, again, was very fortuitous. They got together and they designed a protocol called AtProto that I'm going to talk mainly about today. Then, using AtProto, they made a website, Bluesky, which is a rival to Twitter. So this is supposed to be kind of the first application using AtProto. It's not supposed to be like the end game for AtProto, but the idea is that you have to build an application for people to actually use it. And just as they did this, Elon Musk was taking over Twitter, which worked out, not exactly the way all of the Twitter users wanted. So you got a lot of Twitter users suddenly wanting to flee Twitter from somewhere else. And they found Bluesky, which was basically a Twitter clone, looks exactly like Twitter, but works on different principles and is run by different people. So they all went off to Bluesky, and you got this kind of founding community in Bluesky of people who really hate Elon Musk. It turned out that people who really hate Elon Musk also have a lot of overlap with people who really hate Jack Dorsey. So at this point, Jack Dorsey was still on the board of Bluesky and was still kind of involved with it. He wasn't like the main guy on it, but he was still kind of involved with the project. And he had a really bad time on Bluesky, and people called him like Jack Dorky. And so he flounced, he went off, he had a massive huff, and he left the project. So there's now no Twitter DNA, well, there's no Twitter involvement whatsoever, or ex-Twitter involvement whatsoever, now in Bluesky or in AtProto. And Jack Dorsey has also gone away to Nostra, which is another decentralized platform used mainly for talking about Bitcoin to Jack Dorsey. So, I'm being I don't want to be too unfair. I did a talk at Tokyo Linux Users Group a couple of months back, and I do give Nostra a bit of a more treatment than just that offhanded comment. It's a good project. But anyway, okay. So Bluesky's motto. You remember Google had this motto, "Don't be evil," which was fun while it lasted, right? But Bluesky's assumption is, right now, you can have a bunch of guys in a company, and they all have good intentions. Ultimately, you can't rely on a company to always work like that, right? So the Bluesky motto is, the company is the future adversary. So right now, this company is working to design what's supposed to be a decentralized protocol. but in the future, we should assume they are going to screw us. And when they try to screw us, we want to be able to keep our social network. Ideally, we want to keep almost exactly the same experience and just carry on and leave Bluesky behind. So here is my technical diagram. This looks very much like the first diagram I had of Web 1. In fact, the only change I've made is I've rubbed out, well, I've almost rubbed out, I didn't do a great job of it, but I've rubbed out web server, and I put in PDS. And PDS stands for Personal Data Server. So the PDS is a piece of software that you can run. It's designed to be very, very lightweight. And the idea is that in theory, everybody is supposed to be able to run their own personal data server if they want to. And the way the personal data server differs from the old web server of the olden days, firstly, it's for structured data. So in Bluesky, it's doing things like posts, likes, reposts. By the way, I've been using the word post. The technical term used in Bluesky is skeet, but this is rather rude. The developers kind of pleaded with the community not to call them skeets, and the community insisted they were being called skeets, so that's where we are. But anyway, so we've got structured data of all our stuff. It's attached to an identity. So the personal data server belongs to a person, and they have an identity that we can track in a way that I'm going to talk about in a second. And it's connected to everybody else. So if I have a reply, the personal data server is holding the context of who is this a reply to. And the same, if I'm following somebody, it has all of the people I'm following, and they're all referred to by identifiers. And finally, this is very important. The data can be copied and shared and cached, even if you don't get it from the original personal data server. I'm going to now do something I'm going to try to explain several cryptographic concepts to a room full of drunk people. I'm not very hopeful about this, but I made the drawing on the blackboard, and it took me several minutes. So I'm going to give it a try. So one key thing that's going on here is everything that you do in any kind of record that you have in AtProto and in Bluesky is referred to by its CID, its content ID. And the content ID is a hash of some data, a cryptographic hash. Now, so a cryptographic hash, I don't know how far I'm going to have to go back in explaining concepts up the scale. So a cryptographic hash is a kind of an identifier that you make based on the content of the thing that you're hashing, right? So if you've got a document which is maybe very long, you make the hash of it, and you have a very short identifier that refers to that document. And the extra clever thing about a cryptographic hash is nobody else can make another document that will create the same hash. Like, in theory, they could, but there's no way to find what it would have to be. So if I give you an identifier, or if you want to say, what is the document for this identifier, I can give you that document, and you can recreate that hash, and you can make sure that the document is really what it's supposed to be, referring to that ID. And this is a trick used all over the place in all kinds of P2P systems and things like IPFS, used a lot in blockchain systems, and also used for kind of regular encryption. If you're using like HTTPS, SSL, if you're using any kind of encryption on the internet, there's some hashing going on in there. So what we're doing is every single document is referred to by its hash, its content ID. These are then arranged in a tree. So you've got lots and lots and lots of posts. Each of those posts is put at the bottom of a tree, and we can get the hash of those combination of those posts. Then further up the tree, we can hash the next door neighbor to that, and that one, and that will give us another hash. And if we keep going upwards, we end up with only one hash at the top. So this hash is kind of the summary of your entire data structure. The nice thing about this is later, if I come and I give you a post, and I give you a couple of these intermediate nodes, but most of this data structure I can leave behind. I just give you those few pieces of data, and you can verify that this hash at the top actually includes the post that I made at the bottom. Okay, if you didn't understand, I'm not going to go any further. Anyway, the important thing is that we've got these data structures that allow us to very easily verify some content, to verify it deterministically. And we no longer have to get our content from my web server to know that it's from me, okay? So one person can get the content from my PDS, and then you can keep a copy and you can keep a copy, and it doesn't matter who you get it from, you'll be assured of its authenticity. And this also allows us much more easily to solve kind of the slash-dotting problem, because if my content is popular, you don't have to go to my web server to get it, you can get it from anywhere else. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get that root. We're also going to sign it. So every account has a cryptographic key. That key is referred to by the identifier in the way I'll talk about in a second. And that's going to be signed. So that allows you to always verify that you're looking at my content. You're looking at my post. One more techie thing about the identifier system. So this is another thing that we're going to use a hash for. So we want to make a database of all of our identities. It's going to contain where we're hosting our personal data server. It's going to contain the key that is controlling our personal data server, our ID. It's going to control the key that we're going to sign our data with when you want to check it if it's from me. And it's also going to contain the handle that you're going to be referred to by normal humans, because these identifiers are very kind of long and technical looking. If we want to update that, we can do something similar, but we make kind of a chain with the previous hash, but I'll keep going. Okay, so that's the basic thing that's going on. Doing that, we could just with that previous diagram, where we've got a bunch of users and we've got a bunch of PDSs, and those are hosting a load of content. That would be enough to make a kind of a working social network, right? You've got your client software, you would check all of the personal data servers of the people you're interested in, and then you would get the content and you would display it to the user, and we're done. But that's not very good for performance. It's much easier if you can just have like one place to ask, and that place has talked to all of the different PDSs. So we have these things called relays and app views. A relay is crawling all of the different PDSs, grabbing people's content, and just kind of splurting it out in a stream to anybody who wants it. So it's just kind of collating all this data. Then an app view is a server somewhere that is collating data in a way that the client wants to read it, right? That the software you're using wants to read it. Okay, so this stuff is also very important. I said early on that on our Web1 web server, the web server that you were using didn't really have any, was unopinionated, right? It didn't have any editorial control of my content. It just had to serve it up to whoever wanted it. So what we need to do to make this application work and be properly trustless and billionaire-proof is we need to make sure that there is nothing in the user experience that is depending on this one company. And there are other things that Twitter does apart from just showing your tweets. So one is they're doing curation. So if you go to Twitter, you've got the For You thread, which is a screen that will show all of the posts that some algorithm thinks are going to be interesting to you. And done right, it is really useful in that way. When you're doing that on Twitter, you don't know how they are managing that algorithm. So you don't know what criteria they're using to decide what to put there. So previously, for example, if you were doing kind of outright racist stuff on Twitter, then that would probably have been excluded from the For You stream. Nowadays, if you're doing outright racist comments, that will probably be boosted on your For You screen on Twitter. But in either case, what's happening is that there's somewhere in a company where somebody has got control of what you're seeing in that stream. And we don't want to do that, but we do want to have these curated streams because they're really useful. So we want to unbundle them. We want to make it so that anybody can create these streams, and you can very easily subscribe to them and only put in what somebody asked for. Okay. So this is my Bluesky screen right now. I'm looking at that. So the following is the original thing. The discover, you can't see here because so discover is like the built-in thing made by Bluesky, and it's really bad. So I removed that from my feed. I've then got all of these user created ones. I've got only replies, which is just like replies of people I'm talking to, which is really useful. Mutuals, so people who followed me back, which turns out to be really good quality. I don't know why. Quiet posters. This is really useful. So quiet posters is for people who I follow, but they don't post very much. And when they do post, I want to see what they're posting. So that's really useful. And then here I've got likes of likes. So just people who I follow and I like their stuff. What did they like? And that's so somebody in Japan made this feed and they've collated that. And it will allow you to see some stuff you maybe would not have thought to follow yourself. But could be, bondage fairies. There you go. So there's another thing we need. So curation lets you get this curated algorithm, this sort of curated feed. We also want to exclude some people from our feed. And there are some decentralized systems have tried to say we're just not going to exclude people from our feed. It just turns out that's really not a good experience on any kind of open network. So you need the way to be able to block people. You don't want to have to choose individually everybody you're going to block. You want somebody to do that for you. In Twitter is doing that for you, and they're deciding who to block, and their decisions may not be entirely judicious. So what we want to do in Bluesky is anybody can create a feed that is going to give you a list of accounts to follow and a list of accounts to block. And you can just subscribe to that feed from your client, and then your client will only will show you the people you want, who that list suggested you should follow, and won't show you the people that it said you shouldn't follow. So this is just a set of some of the lists that I'm on. So for example, I've got 2 lovely goats. I post goat pictures a lot. I'm on goat posters. I'm on a technology list. So a technology list was for somebody, I guess, who likes technology. I'm on a technology shit list from somebody who doesn't like technology. I'm on a decentralization list from people who like decentralization. I'm on a conservative following block list from somebody who just doesn't want to see stuff by anybody, who is following somebody who is a conservative. So the idea is that this just really gives you all kinds of freedom to define yourself what kind of thing you want to follow, decide who should be in your feed, who should be outside your feed. And all of this is done independently. None of it is relying on Bluesky. So even if Bluesky evaporate, we can still use this, and we can use it from any client software. We're not relying on the client developers to do it. Okay, so that's basically what they've built. I've kind of skimmed over a lot of things, but a key point is, okay, is this really going to be billionaire-proof? Is it really going to work? So one thing that a lot of people have kind of objected to early on is that we've got these relays and these app views, and these are usually quite big servers. It's not something that you can easily run at home. So if Bluesky, the company, disappears, somebody has actually got to run this kind of infrastructure. And there's an organization that's trying to raise a big pile of money called Free Our Feeds to like, as a public good, run a lot of this infrastructure, which is something, frankly, I don't have a lot of optimism about. But then what we've seen in the last couple of months is that a lot of developers are just stepping up and making this stuff really efficient, making changes to make it really good, and standing up their own infrastructure to do this. And so, 3 months ago, I'd have said, actually, I made this like a slide in a previous presentation 3 months ago. I said it's not done. I would now say it's kind of done. I think this problem is kind of getting solved. It's not really something I worry about. But okay, we had some actual cases, so we can look at what actually happened in practice. So a decentralized social network is supposed to protect you from censorship, for example, by a government. So a court in Turkey banned some dissidents and told Bluesky they had to remove their content. What then happened was Bluesky have a block list built into their client. And Bluesky, under the court order, since they don't want to be taken down in Turkey, they removed these political dissidents from everybody's Bluesky feed. If you were using a different piece of software, for example, Dear.social, which looks exactly like Bluesky, but just doesn't have the Bluesky built-in block list, then you could still see those dissidents. And if you were one of those dissidents, you could still post using Dear.social. So in that respect, the dissidents were totally able to continue to be seen and to continue to post. But all that said, most users are not using Dear.social. So as far as dedicated people who are really trying to get that information were concerned, they could still see them. But as far as those people were concerned, they're trying to get a political message out, some of it to non-political people. So if those people are on the stock Bluesky and they don't move to a different client, it's kind of the same as if they were just like deleted. So in one sense it worked, in one sense it didn't work. Another interesting case we had, so we've got people who are running their own PDSs, their own personal data servers. But if you just go and sign up for Bluesky, you're automatically using a personal data server hosted by Bluesky. And somebody did a DOS attack against all of the Bluesky PDSs. Bluesky effectively was down for anybody who was using one of the PDSs. But for anybody who had their own, it was still up. What that meant in practice was we had a social network of decentralization nuts, which there were like about 300 people who could all follow each other. And, you know, I did some goat posts just to make sure we had enough goats. But like, as far as most of the users were concerned, the network was kind of down, but it was still up for people who were seeking after independence from Bluesky. So what happens? So we said that the company is supposed to be the future adversary. If that future comes tomorrow, then Bluesky still controls the client software that most people are using. There are some independent clients. Most people are still on the Bluesky clients. Bluesky contains the keys that most of the users are signing their messages with. It also sort of has some control over the identity repo in a very limited way for obscure reasons I won't go into. So I think what it means in practice is that people who are trying to be independent of Bluesky, we can use AtProto, we can use some of the Bluesky tools that are there, and we can be independent of Bluesky. We can have a decentralized, what can reasonably be called kind of a billionaire-proof network of ourselves without Bluesky. But if the Bluesky Corporation tomorrow decided, one thing they could say is, okay, we've got all the users, they're basically Bluesky users, right? They don't have their keys, they don't have their PDS, they're just using Bluesky. So we're not going to use AtProto anymore. We're just going to be a regular Web 2.0 site. Basically, they're going to have the network effect. They're going to have the users. There will be some decentralization nuts with our own little thing. But Bluesky, we kind of went away. And then then I guess we kind of reboot with a new decentralized service. And I don't know. But anyway, so one more thing I should say, AtProto is not just Bluesky. AtProto is a protocol for building applications where the user controls their own data, if they want to. There are some other really nice applications getting built. So one is Smoke Signal, which is an events platform. Another is Tangled, which is a replacement for GitHub, which is like a source code, a programming collaboration repository. These things are getting built, and they're really great. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bluesky kind of ends up failing at billionaire-proofing, but then AtProto, except for Bluesky, ends up succeeding. Just because Bluesky has so much control over the Bluesky application, but AtProto really is getting built out kind of as a grassroots thing, where no company is in control of like what the end user is seeing. So you know, I really feel like AtProto could free the internet. Whether Bluesky will or not, I don't know. Okay, that's all I got.
Oh, that's kind of coming in hot. All right. Yes. So let's let Melvin go first because I don't think he can hold it for very long. And also, I think he's going to ask my question. So I don't know. We'll see.
So like the way you've been thank you for your talk. Glad to hear it. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, everybody, when you're holding the microphone, point it at your mouth, not at the ceiling. It works in the direction you're pointing it. Don't hold it at your chest. It's not a magic wand. Point it at your mouth.
Okay. I apologize for being an animated asker. Okay, but like the way you've been presenting the AtProto thing, it feels like it's kind of like I wouldn't say centralized, but I would say coordinated thing. I would imagine like anything that involves being an engineer myself, anything involving open source and free software tends to fracture and split and fork at the seams. So is there like, are we talking about a certain flavor of AtProto, or are we talking about, are kind of like pointing at AtProto as the whole, so to speak?
Yeah, so, I mean, so far what's tended to happen is that you have the Bluesky company, and those guys are very much in control of the protocol, in that people, like everybody, firstly, because they control the main application, and secondly, because currently they have kind of good relations with the technical community. So we don't yet have any kind of fracturing there. One thing I didn't talk about is that the way data is structured is designed kind of to avoid this problem of kind of everything getting fragmented. So Bluesky has a particular definition of how data is, right? Of what data exists and what fields each thing has. So that concerns things like, posts and likes and reskeets. The events thing made by Smoke Signal, that has what's called their own lexicon. So if you want to use a bunch of different data to what Bluesky is using, then you make your own definition, and the PDS will make sure that it only accepts valid records according to that definition. And you are kind of in charge of that initial definition. It's namespaced under your domain. So the idea is that we should be able to avoid fragmentation on the issue of how is data structured, which is one of the key things that that you end up fragmenting over, I think. So far we haven't seen fragmentation, and I think there's a good design kind of to minimize it and to manage it in future. But you get 3 software developers in a room and something's, yeah.
I'm going to be a little greedy, and I have 2 questions. So the first one is, in Turkey, was Bluesky able to tell other people that dear.social is something that exists and maybe you can move to it to like listen to the dissidents? Did they want to, and were they able to do it? And the second question is, so I have a lot of friends who are moving to Mastodon from Instagram or Twitter, etc. So what are the good or the bad things of ActivityPub compared to AtProto?
Yeah. Okay, so the first one, I don't know exactly what communications Bluesky did, but it was like, I don't think there was like an announcement from Bluesky saying, we have been required to block these dissidents and here's Dear Social, which they probably could have done. I don't know how scary a thing that is to do if you're trying to stay in the App Store. But there was certainly a lot of people were posting about it, and there were only specific accounts that were blocked. So it was possible for other accounts kind of in that constellation to then tell the users in those social circles that these people are being blocked and you can use Dear Social instead or some other client instead. So that's, to the best of my knowledge, what was happening with the Turkey situation. On the difference with Mastodon, so the basic philosophy of Mastodon is, I think the basic thought is Web 2.0 was kind of correct as a design, that we're going to have a server and a database, and somebody's going to be managing the server and managing the database. But we want to be able to, and also it kind of potentially curating our experience and doing all that stuff. That's all going to be kind of vertically integrated like Twitter is. But firstly, anybody can be that guy, right? So anybody can be Elon Musk. Anybody can stand up effectively their own Twitter. And then secondly, that we have some ways of communicating between those different servers so that you can kind of pull in stuff from other people's servers. That has quite a few practical consequences. One is that it really matters which server you choose. And this has actually been kind of a big kind of adoption hurdle for Mastodon, because when you sign up, you have to choose a server, and it really matters what server you choose. Like, you know, I had a friend who lost their account because they did like my friend's kind of anarchist, and he had this anarchist server, and then they accused him of capitalism, and they locked his account. So it's like, so it really matters, and also kind of the default kind of way that you communicate in Mastodon is within your server. But then you also have this way of seeing messages across servers. So it's like you're joining a community, and it matters what community you join. So if that's what you're after, that's really great. I think that Mastodon is not really looking like it's going to work as an alternative to Twitter. It's kind of committed to this concept of these sort of separate these individual communities. The thing that persuaded me of this was that in Mastodon, there are a lot of people who feel like they should have privacy. And there was, and I think there still is, really bad search feature in Mastodon. And one of the ways that I used Twitter the most was if something was going on, I would do a search that would allow me to find people to follow. In Mastodon, you can search within your own server. That works pretty well. But it's pretty hard to do a good search of the entire Mastodon ecosystem. And that has roots in some technical decisions. But then somebody came along and said, okay, I'm going to make a thing so that you can search Mastodon really well. And they made the software. And the administrators of the main Mastodon servers got really mad at them. Because some people, they said, had an expectation of privacy that their stuff was only going to be searchable within their own server. And I think, like, which is a totally valid perspective, but with that attitude, you're not going to replace Twitter. You're going to make something else. So Bluesky is kind of designed in a way that it could be a replacement for Twitter. Mastodon is not. Mastodon is designed in a way to make kind of communities. The other thing that I would say about Mastodon is, like, I had a Mastodon account, and I no longer have a Mastodon account because Mastodon accounts are not portable. So you sign up with one server, but then you can't really move that account to another server, right? All of the references in all the documents, if you reply to me, the reference to that reply is replying to my username on that server. So if I then try to move somewhere else, then all of that context is going to break. There's a way you can kind of redirect, so you can kind of delete the posts on the old server and recreate them on the new server, and these kind of kludges like that. But you don't really have account portability. So that really risks bringing us back to the original problem that you start off with somebody being nice and you want them to administer your stuff, and then a little bit down the line, it turns out that they're not nice anymore, and you don't want to trust them, but now you don't have a good way to move. And I feel like this is a problem that shouldn't be technically impossible to solve. And I feel like I think the same happened with Bitcoin, that you get a certain point of kind of when a community is trying to make something and they're a minority, something that tends to happen is they get very defensive about flaws, about people criticizing their thing. And I think what's happened with the Mastodon community is that they've ended up reinventing all the like making explanations for all the flaws in the software as if they're features, which means they're now not going to fix them. And so I think, you know, like with a different approach, Mastodon like could be fixed to be really great, you know, protocol with account portability, stuff like that. But it seems like it's not happening. I don't know.
No, it worked for Sony. All right, probably have time for like one more question if they're going to be that length.
Hi, thank you for the talk. So the protocol AtProto is different from the Bluesky application. So, and I think there might be potential for like alternative user experience that's not merely a Twitter clone, and which, you know, I think like the Twitter and its likes kind of there is some like capitalism aspect that kind of like boosts rage bait content, but I think part of it is inherent to the user experience of Twitter itself. So are there like any attempts to like create an alternative UX that suppresses those kind of rage bait and that boosts more interesting kind of content?
I mean, so as far as actually what content, I guess this is two questions, right? One is the kind of the actual interactions you do, what effect those have, and the other is what you actually display. And as far as what you actually display goes, absolutely, you know, that's what all these feeds are for. That you have all these different feeds that anybody can curate for any purpose, and you can absolutely create those to try to create a kinder environment, or a more engaging environment if that's what you're trying to do. So I think that's certainly what the feeds are for. There are also kind of a lot of different clients that just haven't got huge amounts of traction, but there are certainly plenty of different clients for Bluesky. So for example, there's one that looked like a PHP BB bulletin board from like 1998. So there's a lot of ways to put kind of different front ends on the basic experience. But I think as far as Bluesky goes, the basic components are like post and quote tweet and reply and stuff like that. So I think that those are basically baked into the design. And if you want to do something with really different fundamental social properties using AtProto, then what you would do is you would design a different like data structure, like a different sort of way that things fit together, and you would give that your own lexicon, and you would make your own application like that.
Okay, and I think, I'm sorry, but we had to wrap it up there because we have to technically be out the door by 10:30. But so first of all, if you do have any more questions, do you have a place people can contact you? Maybe a Bluesky address?
I'm goat.navy on Bluesky. Actually, yeah.
Hurry up, I'm running out of songs.
You guys are probably forgetting everything that I said. Okay, there we go. Just at the bottom.
Excellent.
Goat.navy on Bluesky. Yep.
Okay, cool. So I believe we've got, yes, so anyway, can we get a big hand for Edmund Edgar? Thank you so much. That was fascinating. Bruce, where are you? Okay, you're going to start first, or? Okay, so I'm going to pass this over to Bruce. We'll just do abbreviated thank yous at the end because we're under pressure.
Yep, I'll make this quick and painful.
Sorry, I got to flip over your slides.
Yeah, do I get a clicker or?
What? No, I'll have to click them for you.
Okay, that works too. Okay, if you've been here in the last couple of months, you know the drill by now. I get the privilege of being the bearer of bad news. I am American Andrew as opposed to our gracious host, Canadian Andrew over here, otherwise known as Bruce sometimes. And I am here to talk a little bit about what's been going on in the US recently, but also end on a hopeful note. I'm going to be introducing our last speaker of the night, who is going to give a very brief talk. Let's move on to whatever you have next. This month, it's brought to you by Brondo, the Thirst Mutilator. Okay, Idiocracy fans in the audience. Okay, first of all, you can't read them on here, but I think many of you know what these are. This is the list of banned or suspicious words in the US at the moment. These are words that the current administration considers off limits or dangerous, and these run the gamut from everything from diversity to climate change to vaccines. I am here, as I am every month, to say if you are an expert on any of these topics and you would like to speak at Nerd Night, please come talk to me. Okay, next slide. Next up, just like last month, I want to highlight a couple of writers who are a couple of journalists who are working to cover in detail, explain clearly what is going on and why it's bad in things beyond the very top of the news. So here I want to point out, again, I wish it was a little bit less blurry, but the top headline is from a few days ago. The article is written by Beth Mole, working at Ars Technica. I highly recommend looking at her work. if you want to know more about what's going on in the health space. And the same goes for the bottom article, which is by Helen Branswell, who works at STAT online. Both of these are great resources if you want to understand what's going on and how healthcare, medical research in the US is being systematically undermined. You may have heard a few days ago that this fall, access to COVID boosters and even initial COVID shots is going to be fairly severely restricted in the US. That's the top article. The bottom article is about how the World Health Organization is having to make severe staffing cuts due to the US pulling its funding. All right, next slide. Meanwhile, you may know, and we're going to be talking about this in just a minute, that the European Union has been doing a lot, as has Canada, to try and welcome scientists who are leaving the US, either because they are losing their funding or because either because they're losing their funding or because they are no longer welcome in the United States. On the other hand, there is no such concerted, coordinated effort from the top in Japan so far. This is an article from the Nikkei about almost a month ago now, and I don't think things have changed too much since then. Was there another slide?
I don't think so. That was
okay.
I did look for the other slide, but that you said was there, but it wasn't there. I just had a blank slide at the end.
Okay. Well, okay. There was another slide I thought I put in earlier today. Many of you have probably heard, this was all over the news this morning, that Harvard's ability to enroll international students has been completely removed. I don't know how to put it. I couldn't speak to the legal intricacies of that, but you have to keep in mind as well that this is graduation season in the United States. So many of these students have been left in a legal and academic limbo right around the time of their graduation. This affects thousands of students at one of the world's greatest institutions. So what I had in the last slide is not hypothetical when I said that many people are now becoming simply unwelcome in the US. I'm not sure what to do about this. Last month I asked you to please, if there are ways that you can apply pressure to your partners in the US or help some of these students, please do so to bring this home to them. But I want to end on a positive note tonight, and I'm going to do so by horribly pronouncing our next speaker's name. Our next speaker comes to us from the Euraccess program, which I will let her explain. She is Judith Erika Magyar.
Thank you. That was great. I'm Judith Erika Magyar, and I'm the country representative of Euraccess Japan. It's an organization under the European Commission. I would like to ask you to get your phones out. Thank you. Sure. I'd like to ask you to get your phones out because there will be a few QR codes. We'll have an event next week, and also you can become members. Here we go. Okay, so what do we do? Euraccess, the European Research Area Promoter, and we also promote mobility programs, especially Horizon Europe. So we're a comprehensive information portal, and we do lots of networking opportunities, and we are present in 43 countries, 43 countries in Europe, and 9 worldwide hubs. Japan is one of them. The information that we promote is linked to Horizon Europe opportunities, as I said, and I'll say just a few details about them. We'll have a grants in practice session in July at the EU delegation here in Tokyo. So if you would like to apply for funding, I recommend that you attend the session. It will be a practice session on how to write these grant applications, very useful. We also do different events, networking events, not only to apply for specific programs, but also to greet and meet each other, academia, industry, how to find work, how to find contacts, how to find professors who could aid your work. Yeah. All disciplines and sectors, there is absolutely no limitation. So if you are researching marriage rights in Japan, or how to have different names, for spouses, or if you research nuclear physics, everything is welcome. There are no limitations to, what programs Horizon Europe would welcome. We are connecting academia and industry, as I said. These are just a few examples of our collaborative companies, institutes, universities. Also the other way around, funding agencies and different institutions in Japan. I'm rushing because I only have 5 minutes. Horizon Europe. There is a typo here. It's supposed to be 93.5 billion euros. These are the objectives: climate change, sustainable development goals, and EU's competitiveness and growth. It's really, really broad. So you're very welcome to apply in any discipline, as I said. The focus is international collaboration, research and innovation, and making the European research area attractive to everyone on the planet. There are 3 main pillars. The first one contains Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, which promote staff exchanges. If you're a university professor working in Japan, you can go to Europe on an exchange program. If you would like to do a postdoc in Europe, again, you can go on the EU's dime and apply. If you are still in master's level studies, then you can go and do a doctoral program on an exchange in Europe. Pillar 2 is for different clusters. The pillar 3 is more for companies, SMEs especially. Okay, I want to mention the NCP National Contact Point. Fumiko Oda-san, she is hosted by the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation, and she does information sessions in English and Japanese. The Euroxas job portal, it's a central portal. It's not linked to Euroxas Japan. It's linked to all the hubs worldwide and in Europe. And these job opportunities, hosting offers, partnering are all listed on this website. And sorry, just 1 second. You can actually filter for country, industry, and all disciplines. What else? Useful links. The job portal, MSCA website, European Research Council, funding and tenders portal. Okay, now comes the first QR code. You can become a member of Euroxas and use our services for free. I'll give you another 5 seconds. Why is it a good idea? There are a bunch of newsletters, flash notes that are beamed out every week. And we'll also have the European Focus Day. Sorry, the QR code is rather small. It's up there. We'll have this European Focus Day next week. What do we do? From 4 to 6, there will be countries talking about funding opportunities, their connections with Japan, research and innovation ideas, what are the highlights of their work here in Japan, and also what their Japanese partners do in Europe. From 6 to 7:30, we'll have a networking dinner reception. It's all free, so please do come. It's between 4 p.m. and 7:30. Do not worry if you're late. Okay, some people can't make it at 4 p.m. If you come later, that's perfectly all right. It's next Wednesday. All got the QR code? Okay, so here comes the next event after that. It's the Horizon Europe Work Programs information session. That's on the 19th of June. Again, presenting the work programs and then a dinner, a reception afterwards. Okay. All right, and these are just the portal and all SNS QR codes. Not yet, but we are definitely on the way to Bluesky. Yeah, it's on the way. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm done. Andrew, I waited 5 minutes, right? Yeah.
So yeah, so that's it. Thank you so much for joining us. The music didn't play last time. I wasn't expecting it to work this time. I do feel like I'm at the expo, like giving some kind of weird tourism thing. Just having been there, this is very reminiscent of that music. Anyway, I just want to thank. We're so limited on time. I'm just gonna breeze through this. We got Bruce. Thank you so much. Melvin, Daria, Gray, Selena, Lucille at the back, who's been sitting here the whole time waiting just to carry some crap home for me. Yana, who just came to help carry some crap home for me. And is Katie here tonight? Katie, hi. And that's it's it. And thank you to you and to our venue. And good night. We got to clean up. Anything I'm forgetting? I'm good. All right. See you next time, June 20th. Speakers, come over here. I got to get photos of you. Everybody, good night.